Gyalothondup was Dalai Lama's elder brother and his most trusted political advisor. Some even call him the de facto leader of the Tibetan government in exile. In the 1960s, he masterminded armed rebellions inside China-controlled Tibet by airdropping CIA-trained guerrilla fighters behind enemy lines. But years later, he called his collaboration with the CIA the biggest mistake of his life. In the 1980s and 1990s, he acted as Dalai Lama's unofficial envoy to Beijing. He even built ties with Xi Jinping's father. To some Tibetan activists, that made him a traitor who sold out their cause. Today, let's talk about the life of Dalai Lama's brother, Gyalothondup. Gyalothondup was born in 1928 into a family of Tibetan farmers. He was the third of 7 children. Their relatively ordinary rural life took a drastic turn in November 1937. A group of senior monks were searching for the reincarnation of the 13th Dalai Lama, who had died a few years earlier. When they arrived at Gyalothondup's home, some mysterious signs indicated that Gyalothondup's 2-year-old baby brother might be the one. The monks took the baby to Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, and 2 years later declared him the 14th Dalai Lama. Gyalothondup was also moved to Lhasa to be trained as an advisor to his younger brother. In 1942, at the age of 14, Gyalothondup was sent to Nanjing, then the capital of China, to study Chinese language and culture. In his memoir, he recalled being frequently invited to dine at the home of China's supreme leader, Chiang Kai-shek. While in Nanjing, Gyalothondup married a lady named Zhu Dan. She's the daughter of a Chinese general. Here, I need to quickly explain the complex relationship between China and Tibet. During the Qing dynasty, like Korea, Tibet was technically a tributary state of the Chinese Empire, but it enjoyed a high degree of autonomy. After the Qing dynasty collapsed in the early 20th century, Tibet became practically independent. Although the central government in Nanjing still claimed sovereignty over Tibet, in reality, it had little control over the region. I guess part of the reason Chiang Kai-shek treated Gyalothondup so well was to build a personal rapport with someone close to Tibet's future leader. In 1949, as the communists rapidly conquered all of China, Chiang Kai-shek's forces fled to Taiwan. Gyalothondup went to India. In 1951, communist forces arrived at Tibet's doorstep. The Tibetan government, now led by Gyalothondup's younger brother, the Dalai Lama, had little choice but to sign a treaty that gave up Tibet's sovereignty in exchange for a promise of self-rule. But this was a difficult marriage from the very beginning. As for Gyalothondup, after settling in India, he became an important link between the Dalai Lama, India, and the United States. Around 1952, the CIA reached out to him. They promised to support Tibet's struggle against communist China and asked him to help recruit guerrilla fighters. He agreed. We'll talk more about these ill-fated guerrilla fighters a bit later. Meanwhile, things weren't going well inside Tibet. After a brief honeymoon period, China began retracting many of the freedoms it had promised. Life became very difficult for Dalai Lama. In March 1959, he and his entourage decided to flee communist control. Gyalothondup played a crucial role in that escape. He coordinated with local anti-China forces and the Indian army to ensure his younger brother's safe passage to India. Once they arrived in India, Gyalothondup used his connections to help establish an exile government, which quickly grew into a vibrant Tibetan community. In his memoir, Gyalothondup said that his role in his brother's successful escape might be his greatest legacy. However, one episode during that escape is also one of his biggest controversies. When the Dalai Lama and his entourage fled Tibet, they took with them a large amount of monastic gold and jewelry intended to fund future resistance. Gyalothondup was supposed to be in charge of these valuables. However, as he wrote in his memoir, something went terribly wrong. Most of the treasury went missing. Some claimed they were lost during later investments. Others claimed that they were stolen. Gyalothondup insisted that he had nothing to do with the way they disappeared. Dalai Lama's exile to India marked the beginning of the Tibetan independence movement. Remember that the CIA offered to train Tibetan guerrilla fighters? In the 1950s and 1960s, Gyalothondup helped recruit around 300 brave young Tibetan men. The CIA brought them to Camp Hell in Colorado for guerrilla warfare training. The location was chosen because its mountainous terrain resembled Tibet's. These fighters were eventually sent back into Tibet to carry out insurgent activities. Most were killed or captured. Later in life, Gyalothondup said that he deeply regretted his collaboration with the CIA. He claimed that the United States didn't want to help Tibet. It just wanted to make trouble for China. It had no far-sighted policy for Tibet. In 1972, President Nixon visited China and shook hands with Chairman Mao. In the same year, the CIA stopped its military assistance to the Tibetan independence movement. Seeing the futility of violent armed struggle, Gyalothondup pivoted. In 1979, he visited Beijing as a personal representative of his younger brother. He met with Chinese Supreme Leader Deng Xiaoping. Deng famously told him that while Tibetan independence was out of question, everything else was negotiable. Gyalothondup relayed this message to his brother. They both saw it as a good opportunity to engage with China. Over the next 2 decades, Gyalothondup led many rounds of negotiations with Chinese officials. He even built a good working relationship with Xi Zhongxun, the father of China's current president. Thanks to his efforts, the central government in Beijing made life somewhat easier for Tibetans living in Tibet. For example, they increased the number of Tibetan language teachers and rebuilt some monasteries. In 2002, Gyalothondup was allowed to visit Lhasa. It was his first return in 50 years. It was a very emotional moment. Unfortunately, as time went on, the negotiations became more and more difficult. The new generation of Tibetan hardliners, most of them born outside Tibet, called Gyalothondup a traitor. For them, nothing short of full sovereignty was acceptable. At the same time, as China's economy grew stronger and its rule over Tibet grew longer, it saw less and less merit in welcoming back Gyalothondup and the Dalai Lama. By 2010, the negotiations had completely stopped. Thank you so much for watching this video. See you next time.